Hello, you beautiful people. I am Josephina Bashout. I want to welcome you to this video. If you haven't seen my last few videos, please go and check them out on my website, josephinabashout.com, or check them out on my Instagram post. This is a series that I've created to help empower other women who may be going through any type of gynecological cancer or issues to finding their own sovereignty, embodiment, and empowerment through alternative medicine. So I am using my story as medicine. And in the last two videos, I explained my diagnosis, how it impacted me mentally, emotionally, spiritually, how I found an alternative treatment. And so for today's video, I want to talk about what that treatment was and how I incorporated sacred sexuality as a key touch point to bring back in pleasure into such a painful experience. So the treatment that I decided to go do versus having cryotherapy or LEAP, where they would literally carve out my cervix when I was faced with pre-cervical cancer, CIN3. Now, escharotics treatment is something that you have to get done through an ND, a naturopathic doctor. Now, without going into too many details, what I will share is that it is a topical treatment that is done with natural herbs, high-grade acetic acid. And what it does is it works on your cervix like a facial. So it applies it topically. They have to go inside, going into the cervix, and applying it topically. Now, as I was going through this treatment, I had to follow them up with something that is called vag packs, where there are these packs that are these suppositories that would go inside of my body, and it would open up this portal. And as I say, open up this portal, it would open up the medicine, the capsule that was in the suppository, and it would put in all of these different herbs and remedies into my cervix, into my womb, into my yoni, into my pussy, into all the different things that we can call that entry point into our body as a woman. And that very sacred place. And what it brought up for me as I began these treatments was a lot of emotional baggage, a lot of emotional shame and trauma that I had been holding on to. And it was so amplified on a psychological level by being so vulnerable. The thoughts that would come flooding through would be, how could this happen to me? I feel broken. I feel unworthy. I feel ashamed. I feel unworthy. The unworthiness story kept coming up for me over and over and over again. And in my work as a spiritual psychologist practitioner and as a life coach, this is a common collective misbelief and misinterpretation that women everywhere in the world are struggling and working with, as well as men. But for the sake of this video, I'm talking to my ladies out there. So the unworthiness piece kept coming up and kept coming forward for me. And each week I would go in to do these escharotic treatments and put myself on the table, very vulnerable, having them go in and touch one of the most sensitive parts within my body, of the cervix. And not only that, it brought up a lot of pain. Now in this treatment, I had to take an oral protocol 3 times a day that made me literally sick to my stomach. I would have to practice my gag reflex to not throw up and purge out the amount of herbs and supplements that I was taking, because they were so strong, such a severe, heavy dose and high grade, that it was flooding my system, and it was becoming to be so intense that it would make me sick to where I couldn't eat. I couldn't walk at certain times. I couldn't go out to public restaurants because I would feel so sick and so nauseous. I would feel so self-conscious. And what I became aware of was that I was really in a mental space of not only feeling unworthy, but my self-esteem level was so low. And my external environments were just reflecting back what my internal environment was. So at the time, I was in a partnership with a verbally abusive man that actually became physically abusive. So that relationship was a toxic relationship. The things that I was ingesting and consuming before was a series of alcohol and junk food and non-organic and GMO and tons of cheese. And that relationship that I had with those things were also toxic to my body. And not only that, the things that I were thinking were toxic. So the environment that was happening on an internal basis was one that was creating and harboring one of toxicity. And me being so aware through this journey, as I became awake and aware of these things, like I said, I became so aware. I became so aware after I was unaware. And when I became so aware, because my body started responding to me, I realized through this elimination, wow, that there's a lot of unresolved issues that I haven't connected to. Because I was in so much pain in my body, it brought up the emotional memory that was stored in my cellular level around trauma of a sexual abuse that I never actually processed. And what this did was it brought up a flood of emotions of remembering the pain, of remembering the trauma, of remembering the feelings and the sensation. It also brought up the feelings of numbness. It amplified the feelings of numbness in my body. And what I became really aware of is how disconnected I was to my body, how numb I was in my own emotions and in the physical sensory of my living, breathing human experience. What I also attuned to was the fact that I was now in a position where my life experience was now completely focused around pain and suffering and trauma. And there was days when I would get out of bed without any reason or any hope except for my life to live and to cure this and to move past it. But the knowing that I couldn't connect to my partner, or that I wasn't feeling empowered or sexy or activated or desiring to be connected to them because I felt so sick, was also something that I was carrying shame around. And it brought up a whole series of emotions for me, as well as all of these negative thoughts. And what I started to do was I had been studying sacred sexuality for a couple of years. And sacred sexuality is something that is known in Taoism and Taoism and Tantra, which is all of where the teachings come from. And with sacred sexuality, it's this remembrance that our body is a sacred temple, that we are filled with light, that we are sacred, that we are holy, that we are the profane and the profound embodied into one living, breathing creation. That the connection that we can have and the depth and the level of intimacy that we can achieve with one another is life-changing and life-giving. It can be absolutely spiritually transforming. And the way that we would relate to one another is a way of sacredness, of honoring, of reverence, of bowing, of respect, along with kinky sexual intimacy and pleasure, with no taboos and no shame. And it had always sparked my interest, and it was something that I was doing in a solo practice. And yet in this toxic relationship that I was in, where my partner was consistently reseeding my own inner environment and thoughts of shamefulness around sexuality, my own journey around not processing my sexual abuse and trauma, the confusion I had around that, the disassociation with my body and feeling unworthy, was all just being projected back through the mirror of this toxic relationship that I was choosing to continuously be involved and engaged in. So I'm being really aware, and I'm communicating that I know that I was not a victim. I didn't choose a bad partner, and I didn't keep choosing these terrible men. I was actually choosing them over myself, and then in return, I wasn't choosing me. I wasn't choosing self-love. I wasn't choosing self-honor, and I wasn't choosing to actually do the work that was required on a spiritual, emotional, mental, and physical level to address the stored trauma that was happening on a cellular level, because I truly believe that everything that manifests in the body is a physical manifestation of our thoughts and our experiences that are stored in the body. So what I came to understand for me was a healing avenue and opportunity to incorporate more of this sacred sexuality, because I couldn't have sex, and I couldn't drink, and I could barely walk, and I would drag my booty to yoga, and I started meditating. But because I'm such a sexual being, I am like running sexual energy so much, so high, that we are all these sexual creatures, that I truly believe. But I know that my level and my capacity just runs really high naturally. It is one of my gifts. It just flows. And because of that, I felt like there was a really big part of me that wasn't able to share a part of myself, Not to mention all of the negative associations that I had now filtered through and attached to my sexuality. Being broken, being not enough, all the things that I had mentioned before. So for me to implement and start to look at my partner as a sacred being and start to actually look at myself as a very sacred being, this was a reframe of the way that I viewed myself and my body. And it also was a new way for me to use this tool to alchemize, also known as transform, my pain into pleasure. So although I couldn't actually physically have sex, I could still experience deep levels of connection and intimacy. And although my partner was not wanting to meet me in this place, he didn't have the capacity to meet me, as his words would say. And this was many, many partners ago. So this is, again, like 9 years ago. And because he wasn't meeting me in that place, again, I had an opportunity to choose and meet myself in that place. So I started developing a breathwork practice, a tantric breathwork practice. I started reading as much as possible about the goddesses and the goddess archetypes and the qualities to grasp at a different perspective and a point of view that felt more empowering around my sexuality, because everywhere else that I was looking was reaffirming that sex was wrong, dirty, raunchy, bad, broken if you are experiencing these types of symptoms or have gone through these experiences. In Western society, I have not seen anything that really supports us being embodied as sexual creatures and actually shines a positive, empowering light perspective on sexuality and sexual wellness, nor was there anything in mainstream media that highlighted the importance of sexual wellness. It was all about STDs and negativities and prevention, and nothing was really talking about the importance of sexual wellness and body positivity and sex positivity, which is a reason why I am sharing this video, is to allow myself to be the medicine and the channel to remind us that there are so many other sets of belief systems outside of the Western society that helped save me, that helped empower me, that I was able to integrate into my lifestyle design, that helped awaken this sacred sexuality inside of me to where I can dance and I can play and I can feel all of it and feel the power that comes with being in my body again safely, feeling no shame about my expression, and instead reclaiming that for myself and really understanding that what I feel is acceptable. What I experience, what my desires are not sinful or shameful. And through the practice of sacred sexuality, I could see myself through a different lens. And just by shifting my perception of myself, helped me heal so much quicker, and allowed me to take the negative, painful thoughts that I had about myself and about my body. And it created a safety within myself to allow me to dive back deep into my body, into this physical experience, and reconnect the fragmented parts of myself that I had allowed to be spread out outside of me, my power to be outside of me, from this experience that I had when I was 12 years old, and really start to bring in the power back into me and not believe the projections and the toxicity of this verbal abusive relationship that was just mirroring back to me the negative and the verbal abuse that I was actually saying to myself internally but did not vocalize. And so that is why I am a huge advocate for sexual wellness and sacred sexuality and having women really be connected, because it really can heal any type of sexual abuse, negativity, or trauma that we have gone through. And it can really give us a new set of belief systems and a framework of reference that we can start to implement and see ourselves through a new structure that actually honors us as feminine, sexual, sacred beings through the way that it used to be seen through centuries ago. That alone is healing. And then to incorporate that and have these new belief systems and breathwork practices along with going into these escharotic treatments where I could apply through the breathwork while I'm going through these very painful treatments allowed me to transform, literally transform the physical pain into pleasure through breath, through feeling, through opening instead of holding and contracting. So that is what I wanted to share of the possibility that I found and the possibility that is available to women through an escharotics treatment, through sacred sexuality, through really reclaiming your own power and your body. And from that moment on, I started to really develop an embodiment practice, a self-care ritual that became the backbone, solid foundation for my life and my lifestyle that I am now living today. So I will actually get into that design and that creation in my next video tomorrow. So I hope you stay tuned and watch. Please share with any women or men that would be open to this. Subscribe to my channel, my YouTube channel, and leave me a comment below in any of the sections that you see on my website. Thank you so much for tuning in. And you can also feel free to reach out on josephinabashout.com and just keep that love juicy, vulnerable, and alive. I will talk to you and connect with you soon. Mwah. Ciao, lovelies.